agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll need to entertain a motion to approve the special meeting agenda to discuss the canvassing of the August 13th primary.
So made.
Second,
Motion is second.
Ford, aye. Cloud, aye.
Ranger, aye.
Bellis, aye.
Turk, aye.
Okay, item on canvassing, we'll turn the time over to Denise.
Did everyone get the latest update on the canvassing that I dropped into your packet earlier today? I didn't get the final polls until, later this afternoon.
Is that all that's different, is just the final totals?
Yeah, it's just final totals. I believe the results are still somewhat the same. There wasn't any,
Was it?
from the final, we had the preliminary results and then we had another preliminary and then this one's the final. So between those other ones, there wasn't any change. So this is the second final that we've had. I don't know how it's just going down.
But the important thing is it was the final one.
Yes, this is the results now.
Well, the one thing that's nice is every time you hold a final, the turnout turns a little higher, so.
Yes,
We're at least
yes,
up to 30% now, so.
which is, huh?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's 30.15% or 13.
30.54.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so, which is actually higher than what we've had on our general elections in the past, so. Turnout was good. I expect to see a great turnout again for the general election.
Yeah, first go around with vote by mail.
Yeah,
Turnout.
this will be vote by mail too. It's just, people just don't vote in a primary election. But I expect to see more in our next general election. So, the totals, do you need me to read you the totals or are they on your paper? Okay, so, the final totals for Craig Coates is 1,583. Troy Belliston, 1,342. Marshall Simmons, 132. Chris Staley, 1,987. Ben Martinson, 1,002. Marcy. It's the M on the beginning of her name. Whitney, Michael Gold, Marcia was 965. Michael Gold, 681, Kurt Ivey, 1,526, Mike Tate, 639. So the top 6 will proceed on to our general election. I need an approval of my.
And then the process, this still goes to the lieutenant governor's office, right?
Yes, it will get sent up there tonight.
Okay, move approval of the final tallies, acceptance of votes.
Second.
Motion is second.
Turk, aye.
Bellis, aye.
Ranger, aye.
Cloud, aye. Ford, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for your time and effort you care on this. Okay, we'll move on to our workshop.
Mayor, sure, Mayor, I just wanna, did we hear of any issues with the vote by mail? This is our first run at it. Sorry to make you come back.
No. There weren't any issues. In fact, the polling locations was extremely slow. I think we went up at noon and there was only like 11 people that had even voted. In fact, St. George and Santa Clara, they're talking about removing all their voting polls except for one location at like the Dixie Center. So they have that one for everyone, but there's
We
just.
go to the Dixie Center to vote?
I'm not taking that, but the joint one we have out in the fields at the southern, the church out there. There's a possibility we'll eliminate that one and just have everyone come up to the library to vote if they want to vote.
How many votes did they have to not count because they weren't signed or in 2 days?
The ones that I'm surprised are the ones who voted, the votes came in and they voted for 4. Because they read a 4-year term, and so people were voting for 4, which there were quite a few of those that their ballots don't count. We're checking with state law to see if there's some way that we can do it so that it'll bring more of the attention of
They were thorough. I know I've got somebody who had an operation on his hand, a friend, and his signature looked strange, and they brought it back, saying this didn't look like his signature, which it didn't. But they got it.
Yeah. We did a good job.
We have no idea how many votes that were mailed in, but just couldn't count for some reason whatsoever.
But there was a tally that was unsigned,
I remember
that was
seeing
by
something.
precinct. I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah, I was gonna see if I can see where the one was. It's not on this printout. I didn't bring that one in.
Oh, maybe it's in the email.
I'm thinking that was like. Oh, it's not giving them to me on this one, and I didn't print the other one out. But it's on the,
It seemed like it
the
was
ones you guys had
like
received
60 or
before.
70 or something.
Yeah. There wasn't enough to really affect the scores as far as our percentages and things, but they'll go up because of the fact that they're supposed to be checking with the Lieutenant Governor's office to see if they can change how that wording's on there, so it's not misleading for them. But other than that, I think we only had the night of the night that we went over and did the counting, there were probably maybe 10 that I know of that we couldn't use, and they were ones that were from the mail that had come in and things like that we couldn't actually use the ballots. So there was not a lot of ones that we couldn't count. And the ones that the signatures didn't look like I thought that they should look like, we did like have happened to your friend. We give them to them as long as they have their contact information online for us to look at, we can call them and see what happens. You know, what the reason for this. Another thing that people do is they put the husband's wife in the wife's envelope. So when it comes back, you have your wife and your husband, so you just wait. Hopefully the wife's will pop out so that you can call them and say, okay, they're in the wrong envelope. So they catch all kinds of things.
So I'm sorry, I missed this, you said earlier, though it's a low voter turnout, is this comparable to past years with traditional?
This is actually higher than what we've had in past years in our general election,
So higher than our general election.
in the
not this
past,
one.
yes.
So is that, I remember seeing one time, wasn't it something like 23% or something like that was our highest? before,
Was our bias,
And now we're at 30% just on,
just on the primary. So I'm excited about it.
all right, well, it looks like it's going the right direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for her? If not, we'll move on, to our workshop. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for our workshop tonight.
So moved.
Second,
Motion and second,
Terry Kyle.
Ellison, aye.
Rachel, aye.
Bye-bye.
Ward, aye.
thank you. Item 2, discussion and review of creating a special fund for cultural arts with grant tax money. Looks like Councilman Bellson wants to lead that
Yeah,
charge.
so, the reason why I asked to get this on the agenda is, pardon me, a couple months ago when Mr. Young was here for the workshop, he brought up the point that we don't have anything in Washington City that people can use. I mean, you know, St. George City has the Opera House, St. George City has the Electric Theater. And there's been discussion or concern. Well, you know, one is that it's anticipated that the church, the Rock Church, is gonna come back to the city. We'll be able to do something with that at some point. But with the Main Street widening, there's potential that is, you know, they might need to accelerate it just because of the issues of parking and whatnot. And so if we don't have, if that comes back and we decide that we're gonna turn it into like a cultural arts center or performing arts center or whatever, then we're either bonding for it or, I mean, I think it's fair to use RAP tax funds for it. I think it's also fair to kind of look at it and say, do we start setting some of those aside in anticipation of something like that taking place? So that's why I wanted to bring it up, get the rest of the council's opinion on it. And now also staff's input as well.
Well, on the one aspect, I like that church there. I think it's a great church. I don't think it would be nearly as good a cultural art center as the church. First one.
Well, maybe so, but at some point, if the church doesn't want it to be a church, then unless you want to rent it out to a different faith.
Well, the problem, of course, the problem we have is parking. Actually, the church will be very, very limited with respect to who they can sell it to for the simple fact that they will not be able to comply with parking issues unless they do it in conjunction with the parking across the street. So I think they recognize that reality as well. And so, because again, we've got parking here, we have potential expanding parking, we've got land bank. As you know, we've had discussions off and on, even with the property across the street. But they know they're limited because they couldn't turn it over to anybody because they have to meet the parking requirements. So they're limited.
Well, even if that doesn't turn into the church, that was, I appreciate Mr. Young when he was here before us, actually brought that concept up of possibly a community-owned facility that could facilitate different groups of different types of arts and performing arts particularly. So I love the idea. I think it's a great idea if we can find the right facility. Councilwoman Granger she had the right place, but that's come and gone, the one up on the side of the gorge. I think that would be a perfect spot. But I think this would be prudent for us to start to put funds into something, not where they end up being used or how they end up being used. But I think it would be prudent to put them in the earmark for the arts. Otherwise, in my opinion, at the end of the day, we'll use lots of them in parks, and the arts will suffer a little bit from this. And I think that's something in our community we need more of. And so I champion the idea. Not sure exactly how or how to structure it, but I at least like the idea.
Remind me how long rap tax is actually currently,
I've got about 6 years left,
6 more years?
and I would guess it's gonna get renewed. You know, a lot of these cities have committed 20-year commitments out of their rap funds to fund a bond over at Tuacahn. So if it doesn't get renewed, then they're coming out of general fund for those monies. So I think at least I'd be surprised if it didn't get renewed.
So then on the rap tax, we don't have any limitations on putting that into a fund as long as the fund goes towards the prescribed category of arts and recreation.
Yeah, that's how I understand it. As a matter of fact, it's interesting because there's been quite a number of uses, if you look across the state, of what, take for instance, what county is Sevier County almost put, granted, they probably don't generate time, but what they do is they give it all to one facility, and that's the arena there. So there's been some discussion in the past about whether they really the state needs to come in and kind of limit that. They've really given a lot of latitude to the local. Within the state statute that exists, there's still broad latitude with local governing bodies.
One of my questions with this, and it all seems like it's good to set it aside, but at this point is not to a particular location, but designated specifically for arts at this time. Simply because we don't know for sure, we haven't been in conversations with the known assets, but we
Correct.
want to start putting earmark towards specifically to the arts within this fund.
Well, I brought it up, a couple of times as we've done some of these park projects, and I appreciate, Barry bringing parks projects forward, but it's like we continually draw it all the way down. I'd like to start rat rolling some, whatever the case may be, and it'll be a different council before it, actually something comes up. But I think it's fair to start, let a little fund build up so that we have options, and maybe it's part of a bond that we do for for a facility or for some other type of an expansion. But at least it's there to use and assist.
So talking about your vision and maybe even some of the logistics and the legalities of this, if we put some money together, would we we would have to create that by ordinance. Would we also attach an intention to that, a stated intention, that this is this current council's intention to put this towards some type of a
Yeah,
facility to.
though understanding any future council can,
Well, I understand, but I guess I'm trying to flesh out how that would work, and I, never having seen one that was put together, I guess I'm looking at, Council Starkey and Roger for guidance on how you would even, you wouldn't wanna just throw it into a fund and say, I mean, it would always have to go towards arts. But, I mean, some future council could literally pick it up and say, well, we disagree with that, we want it to go right back to parks.
Park,
And you stuck it in a fund and waited for a while for some future council.
And, you know, I think what it says, however, for me is, we recognize the arts are also important. And we don't have a specific vision yet. I got one today that talked about public art that came through in an email for us, and there's an ordinance that we could enact that would help encourage that. But we do need, I think, some planning and encouragement for the other kinds of the arts that we don't currently have in place, and I think that's certainly gonna be in our future sometime somewhere. But to say that we care enough about that, at least to begin to put some money aside for that, I think that's a good statement. I think it's the right statement.
Councilwoman, I appreciate you bringing that up, because that spawned a thought within me that it may not be just a performing arts center, but a arts around the corner type concept of different types of,
Visual arts.
yeah, different types of-
ceramic arts, that's really-
certainly.
Yeah.
I guess the importance to me is that exactly, we create I mean, you can leave it in the RAP tax fund as we do today and let it build, but there again, it's just kind of like putting it in my checking account. When the next one comes along, the check gets written for it, and so if we could put it into a special use of arts, at least we let future councils know what our anticipated uses were, or our desires were, and have certainly their, have their own
And
opinions.
I think
well,
that's,
Ted, if you don't mind, in response to that, you know, you can't control the future council, but at least we can control what we've done, you know, leading into it, so.
You mean as opposed to spending it today on a park?
Well, at least start the process of setting some aside that would be, you know, in anticipation of something like that. I think the likelihood is that the church is gonna come back to us at some time, whether it's in the near future or the distant future, and to have some funds to do something with it, I think it's gonna be.
You know, one thing that's spurred the thought in me is we've talked about this and discussed it. I have no problem setting aside money to show a priority for it. Though we do not have a very designated body or entity or thing at this time, I think it's important to show that priority that we have as a council, because I think we've all expressed that as valuable. I don't feel confident in setting it towards any particular thing, though there are possibilities on the horizon, because I feel there's a lot of discussion that has to happen within the community before we even start seeing possibilities of where it can go, and we need more information before we can say we're designated for a specific thing. I don't see anything
Well,
specific.
again, I'm not suggesting that we set it aside for something specific, I'm just saying that we
And
set
that's my
some
only concern,
aside,
is just saying,
so that when the opportunity is gonna come at some
Right.
point, when it comes,
we need to be ready.
we have some.
I think there's a piece that comes with it. I hope if we make a motion on this, obviously not tonight, but in the future, that it carries with it the obligation for us to form some kind of a community committee and start to create a vision of what the future could be for us in the arts and some possibilities that could come back to the council for future consideration. I think we need to spend some time and effort on what we're gonna do in the arts, if we're gonna be purposeful about it, or if it's just gonna be kind of happenstance. And I think what we're seeing is supposed to be more personal. And I think instead of calling it, what do you say, a rat hole, I think we should call it a rat hole.
Well, yeah, wrap all that.
It definitely needs a better name.
Designated for the arts, no doubt about it. Well, that's just my overall concern, is just making sure it has.
That's something that doesn't, what's your take on it, Roger?
Well, I mean,
Because that's not really a motion until you actually do create a special fund, if that's what's gonna take place.
well, here's just my thoughts on that. You can formally or informally do this. The fact of the matter is you almost have informally set aside money not with a designated purpose, but you could do that informally. So essentially, we've spent, since 2015, roughly 48% of the RAP tax that's come in. Okay, so as of July, you had a balance of, as of July, you had a balance of 718. We collected 1.5 since it started. So you
But of that 718, we've
Allocated.
already allocated another 450.
yeah, but you always are keeping you've always had informally funds available. So, I mean, you can informally do it and you can formally do it. You can always not spend everything you come in with the understanding that we'll use this down the road. But I get what you're saying with respect to, we want to kind of have some discipline there. I would probably only encourage you that whatever you formally set aside, don't make it too onerous so that the council, this one or others, has some flexibility in the event that there is a need for flexibility in some form or another.
Could you?
Whatever you do, you'll not avoid criticism one way or another. But I just think that we've done guidelines before. We have a guideline, for instance, I was just thinking about it, we have a guideline of what minimum level of fund balance we want to keep in this city. That's always been a guideline for us with respect to that. But we also have been very careful that we haven't tried to make it so strict that the council doesn't have the ability to use that for the purposes it's supposed to be.
I agree with that. I just, some of the requests that come through would have brought it all the way down. And so I'd like to not formally back us in a hole. I understand that future councils ought to have some flexibility, but I ought to maybe put a little bit of a policy in place to say we're gonna kind of set aside
And that works.
this just in our own little rainy day fund for when something comes.
That's not a problem, and from the finance side of things, they just will, whatever the policy of the council, they'll just make sure that that's noted on the statement you get and show how that's set aside and approved, be available for public.
Could we-
That's not a problem. I don't think, even from our side, it requires this big kind of structural complexity with the finance system at all.
I think
Well, so what I'm wondering is if we could just even leave it in the RAP tax, but separate the RAP tax and put a name on it.
That's what I would recommend.
So
I
we
would not
separate that and
recommend
just put a
creating
name
this.
on that portion of the RAP tax, which is just an accounting.
Yeah.
It's just accounted for, you just call it, future, arts.
Sounds
Correct. I would do that. I would do that. The RAP tax, the finances on the RAP tax are very clear. You got your inflows, you got your itemized outflows, and what we do is just have a line item set aside that
Well, and there's
whatever,
no
if it's a
rule,
percentage, if it's a dollar amount, whatever it is.
there's no rule in the RAP tax about how much we can accrue before we spend it either, so I think for us to start to create a
rat hole.
this is a RAP. Thank you. Works.
Yeah, we keep it pretty clean. We keep it pretty simple on our side, but very transparent.
So I just think we're helping Lori just create a headline. Money, Washington City throws money down a rat hole.
That's good, Mark. You wouldn't have come up with anything better than that. That's good.
So I guess my final thing on this is the discussion at this point to create a percentage that's annually set aside until the RAP is no longer.
I'm open. I mean, I'm bringing the idea of, I don't have any preconceived ideas on how to do it. I mean, I think recreation, arts and parks, right? So, split it in thirds and maybe you take a third of it and say, that's what goes to the arts and, we allocate whatever funds to whatever groups come in asking for it and we save the rest. That's one way to look at it.
Well, and others,
I'd be open
even
to
if
other
it's if it's minimal compared to how much we have coming in, if it's 100,000, that's still 600,000 by the end of the timeframe for this
Term.
RAP, that starts to be significant. It starts
I
to-
would probably back off a little personally, instead of 30%, or look at 20% of your arts. Just for the mere fact, we're gonna have the next discussion that's coming up here, talking about these other parks. And to me, especially, that's a concept that
Yeah,
that
we're ready for a third yet, because we've been ready for zero almost.
Correct.
So I think that's
yeah, to
something.
me, if we're setting 20% aside of our arts, because then you've got recreation and parks go a lot hand in hand.
Well, I think that's something too, to just kind of sit on as a council, and, you know, I'm just bringing up the idea today.
No,
We
that's-
can work on it in a future workshop on what those allocations ought to be, or what we think of from there. That wasn't my intent today, to get into the weeds of it.
It'd be interesting though, just to do a little math on that. So what do we, if we did 20% 6 years, what would we have? Remember
What are we getting a year now?
We're about 500,000 annual now.
You tell me what the economy's gonna keep
I have
doing,
to
I'll
keep
give you a
going
little
with
better
my
idea.
sheet and I lose my tabs.
Well, that's
Um,
2015 gave.
So-
100,000 is about 20%.
If
It's
it's
just
five,
about $200,000.
Yeah, so was it 17, 18 we did? 18 was 418.
So we're anywhere between 370 and 415,000 dollars.
And just so you know, year to date, so this year, we have spent 18.26% towards performing arts. So with your, what you just recently done, that was just to give you an idea of what that comes out to, it's about 18.26 year to date.
This was a working.
Well, I
Well,
can see the biggest point is we want to show vision, which I think is important to outline.
well,
I also think that the big thing is that this doesn't lock us out, that if we see something else that needs more money with the arts, that this RAP tax is still for recreation, arts and parks. And we can petition that fund and go, okay, if there's something more than the 20% we set aside, we can use those other funds for.
Yeah, but the project, we can expand it.
I
I
just-
realize that project right now.
I think it's good to just kind of set some aside, and the reason why I bring it up is set it aside for a hard asset that's gonna, you know, serve the community for decades, you know, with what we kind of plan for, so that's the overall, driving motivation, so.
Good discussion. Any other items to discuss?
So I'm hearing that we'll prepare just a resolution or something for the council to bring back to the council about one year.
Well, probably, I would ask that staff kind of get together between you and Barry and Kimberly and kind of just maybe get a proposal together or what you guys think, and then let's chew it up together with the council on a future workshop. That work for you, Jeff?
Certainly works for me. When you start talking chewing, I'm in.
You have a question, Councilman Clark? All right, we'll move on to item 3. Discussion review of agreement granting an easement for the installation and perpetual maintenance, repair, and replacement of a golf ball protection net on Washington City property.
So this, this is, if, for those of you who are aware of it, the hotel is being, being constructed or already constructed down on exit 10. They border, their property borders our golf course, but there's a bit of a distance there. And much like the residents who live along the golf course, anyone who wants to best protect themselves from golf balls, put up a golf ball net along there. And the city's always been really very upfront and clear to folks that they've built over the last 15, 20, 25 years that if they want to take responsibility for that, that's what they can do. The city doesn't control where people hit golf balls into their yards or into their windows. So almost everyone, if not everyone, has put up those nettings along their property lines on the residential units. The hotel approached the golf course personnel, approached Barry and requested that they place some netting along that, what hole is it, 13?
Well,
12, along 12, which if you had a real, a hook or a slice, depending, I guess, if you're right or left-handed on there, and hit it hard, you'd hit over there, and there's a possibility you could either bounce or jump onto their property, which means they wanted to they wanted to put a netting up also.
Didn't we see some drawings of where they were?
Yeah, we have,
approved the-
that's what this is.
Okay.
This is an exhibit the exhibit on this will show where the survey has been placed that easement for both the construction and placement. It's on our property. The real reason they had to come to the city was because the best location, just from an engineering standpoint and from a bad golfer standpoint, is closer on our property center, so it catches more of the balls as they come that area. So they've asked to place it on our land. So we prepared an easement agreement, really similar to what we did with Dean Terry. I don't remember if you recall that last year sometime when Dean was completing his land, some of his commercial land out there. He used some of our land to put some landscaping and some retention on. Same type of easement, mutually beneficial to both parties, no real difficult or onerous provisions in it. So they have 180 days. They weren't really sure when they were going to put that, when they were going to pull the trigger. So they've been given 180 days to place that golf ball netting in according to the exhibit. And then they have a perpetual easement of about 10 feet around that for upkeep. So I guess when
But
The muskrats are
upkeep
chewing
and the
through.
maintenance and the installation, that's all on them. We're just giving them the easement for
we're allowed them the right to do, yeah.
positioning it on our property.
And that's all they can use it for. They can't, they're not there to,
And they're not proposing to rename hole 12 a rat hole, are they? That's.
No, they're
Well, they may
just calling.
I'm not sure they're
Only if
aware.
you start giving them funds for it, will they do that?
I'm not sure the immediacy of that right now, so maybe they're watching, they'll change to that.
Maybe we can get them to
Just
name it.
FYI, yesterday I emailed that.
Okay, keep me posted on that.
But he eagled it bouncing off the side of the hotel.
I went off the red.
He threw it back over his fence.
But we've also included on
How
there.
many more times do I have to hear about it?
Until,
Yeah, you'd be
until
really
the whole
impressed
one
with Portland,
probably.
London.
Yeah, it would be.
So I've also included on there, though, to make sure that the public knows when they see that netting up there, because the public's gonna think it's our netting. That they put signs on there, put a provision here that indicates that they'll put some reasonably spaced signs so the public understand, facing the public, so they'll understand that the net is wholly owned and upkeep and maintained by the private owners of the hotel. So
Didn't we put in the agreement that, if there was any reason we could revoke that?
there's provisions that they don't keep it up, then we can, yeah, but maybe, yeah, and that they don't mess around too much with just our vegetation out there, because we're kind of picky about it.
What is your concern with putting the signs up there? We had experience where the public blames us or wants us to have ownership or non-ownership of today?
Yeah, the concern I have, just being a retentive attorney after all these years, is the fact that it's an attractive nuisance. So right now, people don't go up on and start and look over on that hole and watch people hitting golf balls off. When the net's up there, I don't know, I can't tell you what the natural attraction would be for someone staying in the hotel, and maybe a golfer that wants to walk up and check it out. We just want to make sure that when they do get there, the city isn't misleading them into the fact that somehow the city has placed that there for their safety or otherwise. It's still just a golf course. Don't walk out where you can get hit by a golf ball.
So there's, we used to go through this with the hotel, we want to be careful that there's not a perceived level of care that the city is providing by a course being there. We want to make it very clear this is not the city's net. There is no perceived level of care there that could be construed.
Where this net does not stop golf balls.
And if they complain about it, or if they say something is not being done, like they have, if they have a complaint about it, they can complain to the hotel instead of calling Barry up and saying, Barry, you got way too many Snickers wrappers.
But legally, even if there is a perceived level of care, it's just, it wouldn't force us into any action.
Yeah, well, I can't tell you what, I can't tell you a lawsuit would be issued. Bringing a lawsuit and having a liability are two different things. So from our standpoint, golf courses are what they've always been, and our insurance company is confirmed this time and time again, and that is the person that hits a golf ball and hits somebody when they're teeing off or otherwise, they're the only one that's responsible for hitting that person. The city doesn't invite people to come on the golf course in any way to get hit by golf balls.
So in just kind of a form of simplifying our agreement, it is not a change of property, it's just the right to use something on the easement to take care of just the safety needs that we know that are prevalent there. And within that agreement, all maintenance, all care, everything is to be held by the people that are maintaining this fence, which is not Washington City. And this is something that is reviewed annually in perpetuity. Is there a point?
Anytime any changes are made to it, they want to make modifications, they want to replace it,
That comes back
They've
to
gotta
the
go through-
council or
it's, no, they've got to go through, probably whoever our department head who would Barry designate, which will most likely be the most knowledgeable, is going to be somebody like Kevin, who would be doing that, sort of,
So
would
back
be
to
doing
the
that, yeah, he's the
city,
ground
something is
superintendent.
done with this property or said all deflector at this time is net. So if anything changes to that, it has to go back to the city for communication, what happens with it.
Say that one again.
So if anything is to be changed with what's being proposed, it has to be approved by a city personnel before any changes or anything else.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're making changes to the agreement will always have.
Oh, no.
Well, I think what he's talking about is just the structure, architecture, and design of
Right.
that. Because, but honestly, there was a lot more information on the exhibits we received last time than there was on this.
Well,
It's pretty scant as far as details, how.
they were using, their attorney didn't have that exhibit, he didn't know what I was talking about, because I redrafted this agreement that kind of just fit what we're used to here, and, they requested this new exhibit be used, because I even referred to that other exhibit, by the definition of it, the golf netting site plan, had to take that out because they're not using that exhibit. They're not using, I don't know if they're even using that architect at this point, so.
Well, I'm more concerned about what it looks like where it's on city property than, they fit some ideas to us, but that's not in what this agreement here. So I'd kind of like to know what they're actually truly intending to put up before, well, either that or as a portion of the agreement that we have a veto option on the design. Because I kind of presented us an idea of what they wanted, but that's not included in the agreement or in the information attached here, so.
Right, and the information we have, they don't have, right, at least that's what we've been informed, they don't have it. They don't have it yet, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily accurate.
Well, I would like to have them included in the agreement that they have to get that approved by us.
In order to get full,
So I'm just thinking that through in terms of them putting it up, so the next city council meeting that would be, because to me, that sounds like that's a condition of also approving the agreement, is that we're gonna have that exhibit of some sort showing you the details on that, if that's the case, which they
Either that.
They
or
expressed to me
bring it
they did
back
not
to
have
us.
it.
But yeah, they
Well,
may,
yeah, no one
they
bring
may
it
not
back
want
if they're
to
gonna.
I don't wanna just
go
approve
get
it on what it is.
all that work done
I don't
if they
think-
don't have agreement in place. They want this agreement in place, and the agreement includes that they have to bring it back to council.
I'm fine with doing an agreement as long as it has that option saying final plans need to be approved before it's finalized.
At the city council discretion.
Yeah. I don't want them to feel like they can't move forward. We're supportive of it, but supporting something we don't know what it is, I don't think is really responsible on our part. I think it's important for us to hold that responsibility there of, we're not willing to just let it go. We need to have that accountability that we're willing to work with. We're not saying, no, you can't do it, and if you don't have it, you don't like it, it's fine. But not having anything, I don't really think shows a sense of.
And by the way, guys, I'm fine with that, they were concerned I was a little overly zealous for the city as it was anyway, so I'm fine with that. The reality of that is, and the practical aspect of that is, if it's being, effective is conditioned upon approving the exhibit, having the city council approve that exhibit, it's the same as doing it all at one time. I mean, in effect, you're approving an agreement saying, you still gotta bring it back for this part of it, we might as well just have it all at the same time, I would think, there's no real difference, because they can't start building it until you guys approve the exhibit.
So are we asking for something you're not ready to grant yet?
Let's put it this way, if they have one, and that's been, for whatever reason, I haven't been made aware of it, as I've asked about it, they may, and just, the attorney may not have been aware that they have an exhibit that they could use at any
They,
time.
they presented something to us in the past.
No,
I don't know if it was.
No, I got it. I have that also, and I mentioned it in this last agreement, because I put this agreement, this is a part of an exhibit. They came back and said, we don't have it. So then we're not using, the attorney didn't even know what I was talking about, their attorney. And we got explained to us today by one of the owners, one of the developers, that that was a design that they had made as they were looking into doing it. That's how I read that email anyway. Did you read it differently, Roger?
I've read so many emails.
I don't think it would be a problem for them to do that.
No,
They, you know, they know about, I think when we met, they told us the height of it, they told us what, I mean, it's basically comparable to all those that are up there already, but I think it's, runs my mind, it's like 40 feet high.
so this is just something going along with what Barry's saying, and I want to make sure that I understand. You're mostly interested in the elevation view, looking at it. Okay. Want to make sure I was
Well, but
clear.
also a little bit of its,
Because we have the
opaque
one,
nature, or
what,
lack thereof. How see-through is it gonna be? How much is it gonna block out? Is it gonna completely block out the sun, or are you gonna be able to see-through it?
No, it's,
Working on it in red with the U right in the middle of it.
It is you.
you get that, it's a hole in one, this counts as a hole in one.
That's right.
so
If
the
you,
reason I asked about
I
elevation,
read you would be grounds for
I tried
rejection.
to find it in the right, I couldn't see
Wait.
elevation in this, but I thought on,
I think we have seen, I
Big
think
blue
what
wall.
Councilman Warren is referring to is we have seen an
I
elevation.
think so.
Without me digging through the myriad of emails I've got, what Jeff was showing here is actually, kind of the site plan. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about an elevation.
I think that
So,
Councilman Ward's talking about the actual net,
yeah,
right? What's it
as you're
gonna
looking at it.
What's gonna be made out of, what color is it, what?
It's probably gonna be similar to what's down at South Gate Golf Course.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's what I expect, that's what I assume, but if it's gonna be on city property, I don't wanna assume anything, I want it to be.
Right.
So I still want to make sure that I understand what's all being requested, because I think there's still a difference between, they can be incorporated in the same, but there's still a difference between an elevation view and a spec sheet. So if you want to just see kind of what does it look like with maybe some specs on it, I would imagine, again, because the issue is, we can call into play, as per the agreement, we can call into play that the net is getting to deteriorate, they have to respond. So I'm sure they're gonna probably try to. If we get an elevation, my recommendation would be then, if it's an elevation view, and this is to try to see if we can keep this on schedule for tomorrow, is that, where they refer to it in the agreement, so in connection with the development use of hotel parcels, the hotel owner seeks permission to construct and install a netting system, and then have an exhibit.
They already have a design on.
And the exhibit, we refer to the exhibit within the agreement. They provide for us before tomorrow night the fulfillment of that exhibit, which is an elevation view. If we do that, does that work?
Yeah, but now you got me thinking about the visible deterioration. Do we have anything in here that we can,
Yeah, we do. So we can call, so if it starts to deteriorate, it is, the city, and we define the city as it be Kevin or whomever, it could be you guys. But the city can indicate that it needs to be repaired, and they have to respond within a particular period of time. If it continues to be a problem, we can just remove these, we can just withdraw their ability to use the easement. So yes, they have to respond if the city indicates that it's a problem. They have to respond within a very specific period of time. If they refuse, we've always got the ultimate hammer is to just say we're withdrawing these. Okay.
If they refuse to do it, we do the upkeep, it's just like if someone fails to take care of a sidewalk and they beat up, they have to
I
repay.
get that, but can you step back through what you were proposing for to keep it on the schedule for tomorrow?
So what I was just wondering is if in fact the exhibit we all kind of seem to remember was their exhibit and they're still good with that, I think Jeff can just insert as per exhibit whatever.
We'll put the side plan.
And then they can insert that, we'll drop it in your packet. You can look at it and say that cuts it or that doesn't cut it for us tomorrow night. And then if it does cut it for you, everybody stays on schedule. But you'll get the chance to see it. But I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna see is poles and a net.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna be
Where
a
that's what they're
complicated
installing,
thing.
that is kind of what I'm assuming.
Well,
Yeah, so you're not gonna
they're
have a
not
complicated
installing it.
visual.
They're not
But you-
installing it for us, this is their hotel, they're trying to protect, and their guests they're trying to protect, they're not gonna put a piece of junk.
No, and that's what they mentioned to us also, because they want to see the view. That's important to them from out the back of that, so they're gonna do something really nice for their,
I think they've engineered it with
yeah,
steel poles and
yeah, no, it's,
stuff like that, where it's gonna be good.
it'll be a good one, but I agree, I think we, need to have on our, the height.
It's not gonna look like Southgate, it's got the poles all kind of bowed inward.
No, it's gonna represent that.
It's a concern for them to make it attractive for their clients also.
With response to the city manager, Roger, your big question was, well, what would you need to make sure it looked good? I just need to see where it is as much as they have it, because it seems kind of like we've seen something, but it's no longer here. But of course, it's gonna be the
They
best
took it
thing
out.
ever, and it's gonna be wonderful. And of course, they would never, I don't want it to be left at that level. I think it's important for us to see it for what it is. And so I know I'm not asking for a spec sheet down to gauge of steel and, a ply of wire or ropes or who knows what else is out there. I just do want to know.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I just wanna make sure that we give them the best direction. I know that they would like to see this, move as expeditiously as possible, because this has been a challenge, and it's not been a challenge for any
Well, they're already
particular
doing it.
individual, it's just been a challenge.
And they're already
I do feel like the language of the
They're
document
already they need to figure
is
it out.
strong enough to
Yeah.
verify the maintenance, which was one concern, but I just wanna see what it is.
Yeah,
It
so
gives us a lot of.
we'll put in an elevation view. Again, don't probably expect that elevation view will be much more than kind of the diagram of poles in the net and their height. They might show their height and that sort of stuff. But if that's sufficient, we'll move forward to that direction, see if we can still get it.
Because if I'm not wrong, I remember there was a significant change from peak elevation in that net to the lower elevation. It wasn't gonna be uniform the whole length.
Remember, I think that it's gonna be the same as a
No, it's not.
I think toward, south, it's not gonna be as high as it is.
as it more
So
towards
it's
the
not just
hotel.
gonna be a square thing up and down, there are some significant things I just wanna verify.
So, yeah, and again, I don't think that'll be a problem for them if in fact their previous exhibit is still kind of what they're looking at. And I'll see if I can get through too and see.
And they've tried to, they've had to have penciled, I kept mentioning to their attorney, they've had to have penciled this in somewhere and know what the specs are and what they're gonna cost. So I suspect they do have it, especially if they indicate they wanna get moving on it. I'm just trying to see if it gives elevations and specs we had previously.
I think they have it, I think I've seen it.
So,
They issues of.
so my architect drew it up, and so I have seen it. And they sent it to an engineer. It was amazing once the engineering got involved, because they planned wind load, even though that hotel's in front of it, they stopped planning wind loads. And, it's a strong, those poles are no joke.
And see, and I appreciate that assurance, I would just like to have that condition from the building for church council to respect.
And their exhibit may be, if they use this golf fencing style plan, which I originally had as the exhibit, because they indicate on there, for example, they go as many specifics as 40-foot tall golf ball protection net, 18-foot long concrete ADA side ramp with handrails, CD. So they've got it pretty well detailed out. If there's some reason they're not using this may encourage them to get back to using one they've got currently drafted.
Mayor, I have no further discussions about this.
Anybody else? Okay, move on to item 4, discussion and review of the possibility of adding a policy for neighborhood parks. Councilwoman Granger.
Thank you. I think the basic thing is, do we agree that there's something that we can do for our neighborhoods? Beyond what we're doing perhaps. And if we agree that we want people to feel like this is a place for them, that they have neighbors here, and that they belong, that one of the gathering places for people to get that feeling is in a local neighborhood. And given that we probably cannot afford to buy, what's our minimum, is it 4 acres, Barry? And that's larger than we're able to put in a lot of locations, or that a builder is able to put in a location. Then what do we need to change in terms of policies, and what is the cost gonna be to encourage neighborhood parks that are maybe 2 acres, and what can we do in 2 acres, or 1.5 acres, what can we do in 1.5 acres, that bring people together and create opportunities that are more local. Given that we'll probably always be looking for the large ones, Sullivan Park is wonderful, and we may well do some more of those, but what can we do for the neighborhoods? And I just think that maybe it's time for us to start moving in that direction and see what that means. And what we can do in those, and how we could encourage builders, and how we can support builders who are doing that, and how we can support what we're trying to do in doing that. And I think a movement in that direction has been for us to talk about the use of retention ponds, and have some land available to do that, so maybe that's part of that discussion. But that's my introduction to it. I think that we want people to feel like they belong in the areas that they are, and they have a place to gather, and I think we can perhaps be more aggressive about that if we'll change our rules about how large these parks have to be.
One of my concerns with that, I appreciate this being brought forward, is the concept of maintenance and upkeep in our parks. We run into significant budgetary constraints for upkeep of our parks as they age. I've seen it in all of our parks that are over 10 years. And one thing that I would be in favor of looking into is maybe addressing this through ways which is truly better maintained and taken care of by granting concepts of maybe concepts within our bonus density within the new development that comes in, as long as there's an HOA that covers the park and everything else. It might be worth discussing, simply because it shifts the burden off of all the taxpayers, but lets the communities as they form have the amenities which they need. I think it's valuable. I think it's very important to have common space for everyone within communities where they go. However, funding those things in perpetuity comes at a huge cost and expense, and it's very limited. Us stretching our personnel and maintenance to go from one to the other and back and forth.
That does seem onerous, but I've talked to some areas that do that, and they've got special crews and special machines that they can haul easily and attach, and they can create a routine to do that, that it doesn't become perhaps as onerous as it might seem initially to do that. I think we need more research on that. Obviously, we don't just make assumptions about that. It has to be something we can afford and that we philosophically can endorse. And I think that if we endorse the philosophy, then let's see what we need to do to make that happen.
Just to be clear, I'm just trying to understand, so you're thinking of creating a level of parks that is smaller than what is currently called out for ordinance, that would likely be built by the builder?
No, not necessarily.
Density credits?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is, well, then how do we do that? Can we work with builders who are doing that and be more supportive of that so that we have them and they're public, not just private? Maybe
And
it
the city
doesn't.
would do the maintenance long term.
Sure, and I think, to say, well, that area, they're gonna have to do the maintenance. Maybe, but that could be put at owners because they don't have the equipment, they don't have the landscaping, they don't have the expertise. That may not give us the standard of quality that we want for parks. But an example of that is Green Springs Park. Green Springs Park is really usable area. What, 1.5 acres?
It's probably 3.
Okay, whatever it is, it's not full.
You have to always have a parking lot. Parking lot takes.
Okay, parking lot takes some.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it has down that hill and on the flat, really, you
It
can,
might be 4. It might be 4 you not use.
uh,
I could qualify for this.
I think it's not. Yeah, I think it's not.
Very-
So my point is that you really have got a park that people gather at that's smaller.
I agree with the concept of smaller parks. Sunday, I spent a place, some of our high density housing, just at the base of Walmart over here. Some people invited us over, surprised on how spacious a lot of the homes are. You walk out and there is no park, but that doesn't stop the kids from the ramps and the biking and the riding around and everything. And we maybe do not need such a large park to still provide what people are looking for in parks. And I think that's a unique approach. to
And if
the
we get
smaller
after
parks.
it, it can be where the new schools are in parks next to it. Now, we may be doing that, but I've known that in the past, we've purposely tried to do that because it creates an expansion of that.
Barry, I got a quick question. What are your thoughts on parks where we didn't have to have much parking to it? Where they're not on arterial, they're more off, in neighborhoods where it's more walking, kids going to the park on the street or on their bikes or whatever else. We always require it.
Well, yeah, we do it at the parks we build because it's a public park and people come from, within a mile or 2 miles to use it. And that's just a requirement we've always had, to have so much parking. I mean, right now we're doing, in a sense, we're doing, and the cost you have for a smaller park is not much difference than you have for a bigger park that more people can use. By the time you build a park and the acreage, right now we're looking at, we're calling they're trailheads. The Boyers give you a trailhead, and the Hill Hole, Sienna Hills area is a trailhead, much small, but funding wise, money wise, those are they're going to cost about as much as a park quite a bit bigger, just for the fact that when you go through the
Just
whole thing.
thinking
and
infrastructurally,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that every park is gonna need a restroom in it to be called a park.
And some don't have parking, and I've seen those, and you would ask, you have a lot of neighbors that are mad that everybody's coming to park in front of their houses, and the moms are bringing kids to the door, to the neighbors, and asking them to use the bathroom, things like that. So I think there's just some things that if you're gonna have a public park that you provide. And I think those are two.
I think conceptually, we're probably at least easier to achieve through your PUD process, like we've done with some of those others that require more open space, or they call them the top lots and these things, but maybe we have a little better infrastructure of what that requirement may be as part of that PUD to say.
There's a little bit.
The top lot is required to have these types of amenities into it, which are gonna service the children, the kids in that neighborhood per se.
And I don't
We
know,
don't get into
this is another example, I don't know if, I know Bushy guys just talked to me, the Sunrise Valley area, they're talking about doing a park out there. They need a detention area, and so they talked about that, and one of their things, I told them is, they have to talk to council about this, but they're looking at building that and doing that with what's been talked about with the density, giving them a little bit higher density, do that, they would put that, which I think is something the council should look at, that would help out with that. So those types of things would be done in an agreement.
Over in Coral Canyon, across from where the community center is, there's a little park that's right there. It's not very big. Is that ours or is that Coral Canyon?
That'd be Coral Canyons. We haven't given, our park right there by the community center is just down that, that's the Heritage Park. But Coral Canyon has a few parks, they have them up on top too. As you go into Highland Park, as you drive there, there's one on the right hand side, it's just a little small playground basically, a little area.
But that's all just HOA.
I know the developers do that, yeah. Yeah, they don't usually put a lot of grass and stuff, and that's usually just a playground, which I think is great, and those developers do that. And matter of fact, I don't think I've ever seen anybody even on that. I've driven up there, I've never seen anybody use that park there, ever.
Is it just a piece of grass? Is that all it is? I mean, what infrastructure?
Yeah, it's mostly just like it's like, just a playground it's not grass, you can't have grass where it falls on, so it's like sand, but it doesn't have much else around it.
Where I used to live as a neighborhood, we got together and did like a, gazebo, a little area, and whatnot. You gotta use all that.
There's quite a few of those out there, there are. So those things are certain possibilities, but they have to be to the city standard, there certainly have to be things that we would require to do.
Was there, cause
I can give you some examples that are nightmares, you know?
Is there any reason why we couldn't just say, okay, we don't really classify a certain size to be the limit, we just, these are the things we need to have in the park, and as long as it gets through the city council process, it works.
I mean, I think you could lower that, but I still think you classify size. I mean, I think just to leave it open and I don't think you're asking
Yeah,
for,
we lower
I think
it
you're asking for trouble.
Sure, if we lower it to 2 acres or whatever, then we're not saying every person can be 2 acres. We're saying if what works right here is 2 acres, then let's do 2 acres or 3 or 2.5.
And that'd be up to the council.
Mary, is that what you're suggesting is a nightmare, is just any size, you sort of say something about a nightmare?
Well, there's been areas that have done parks that they wanted us to basically take over, which there's no way we can or will, because it would be a maintenance nightmare. It's just not, they just don't do them correctly, they don't, we want to be able to maintain them and have them built right and correctly to be able to do that. So there's some things out there right now that have been done, and I won't go into any specifics.
I wonder if we need to look at it from 2 ends, and one is exactly where we're looking at, and the second would be to just relook at our bonus density credits. Sometimes I look at what we've given away bonus density, and I see what we've gotten back out of it, and I think, maybe we could have. Well, yeah, maybe we could have gotten something a little more out of that, something that could have been similar between what Councilman Turek and Councilman Ranger are speaking about is just a more regional park, and in some cases, they may not, because it's maybe primarily going to be used by that neighborhood, they may not need a bathroom or parking.
Well, let me give you an example. So you can, one we're doing right now, the Shooting Star Park. I don't know if you've been down there, anybody's been down there lately. And that's a 5.5 acre. We don't need it. I mean, that's a big.
Bigger than Green Springs?
It's, no, Green Spring is bigger, and Green Spring's about 8.
So 8.
And about half of that's, so it's at least, so, and it's got the same type of thing, which we're gonna do at Green Spring. We're gonna put the grass in there, but the grass, matter of fact, the grass goes in a week from tomorrow. They start putting grass in that. We'll have a grand opening in that park, October, I think the first weekend in October, first Saturday in October, so that's getting really close. But that's a good example of what can be done correctly in the neighborhood, and we just done an agreement with them for impact fee credits. And that can be done in a PUD, type thing.
Well, and
There's
that's
one way
part
to
of,
do
that's
that,
part of
but-
the issue is, we're hearing from people in the fields mostly a lot about the amount of impact fees that they're putting into parks. And that they don't have the parks that they need,
But so there are parks down the field. I mean, we have the Treasure Valley, which is clear down. We have Pineview, which is right there. We also have the Shooting Star that's going in right now, and then a lot of those impact fees have go to Sullivan.
Yeah.
That's a regional park, and they use that.
I mean, that's a whole big discussion because they have a part in regional parks too. Okay. But I'm just saying, I've heard that.
And we do have other ones planned, so we do have other ones planned that will go in, so it's not like, and those are pretty strategically placed out there where people can use them very, very easily. I had people come and tell me there's someone close, and then when I got back with them and showed them the distance, it was a lot closer than they thought, and they did that.
I fully agree that both what Councilman Ranger and what Councilman Moore and I brought up is when you have a development go in, when we go in, we take this fund up, we'll put the park up when we can. But I feel it's important that if we can work it into some way into our PUD or something, that when a community is built, the community has a common place. And I think that's something worth us looking into and seeing if we can motivate that, whether it is private or not. The concept that I think that our city manager has brought up very often is, what is the sense of community? Is it equal for all of us, or is it different for each part of our area? And I think that when you grow a new community, you start where the community is and make sure that it is taken care of. And so that's where I'm moving more towards. I'm open to discussing these smaller parks, and if it's a private-public partnership, if it's just a public or just a private, either way, I'm fine with looking at ways to motivate or incentivize or look at conceptual
And I'm
standards.
not against that either, I agree, they just need to be done right. I don't think I think we need to establish,
I agree
we
to
need
see.
to make some establishment for sure, that's not too small.
So, with respect to that, I think the council's actually kind of on the right.
Yeah, I don't,
I feel good about, because again, I think there's a couple of places that we can, and again, these all amount to exactions to the developer. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's still an exaction to the developer, but it still may be a benefit to them depending on what the market is. But there are two tools that the council has right now, and they've both been brought up, PUDs. You have great control over the PUDs and what goes in there. Now, to address maybe the city's side of the PUD, what we ought to develop from that is just, let's go back to the specifications. If the council negotiates a park as part of a PUD, and the council as a partner in that development, partner of the conceptual of the development, says this is what we would like to see, or even the developer says this is what I'm willing to put in, then they already know that there will be a set of spec sheets that they will have to comply with. And again, the reason this is a concern to us, especially if ultimately there's some discussion about maintenance and ownership and those things like that, is because we know that there are private parks that are built that we would never accept, because in 10 years from now, those asphalt trails will be a disaster. But I think if we had a spec sheet, I mean, that they've already know that when they bought into this agreement to build a park and a PUD, and you've all kind of come to agreement on what that park's gonna look like, whether it's 2 acres or whatever, that these are gonna, you'll have to go to community development or whoever and pick up a spec sheet for making sure that. And then the second thing, let me just add this, the second tool you do have, and again, the key here is a spec sheet, I think, because the one park we had with bonus density, I like the bonus density thing because the other thing the bonus density does for us is it encourages cluster development, which we like, because then you don't have the urban sprawl that eats up the open space. But the other thing, the one we had out there is,
Treasure Valley.
yeah, Treasure Valley. If we would have had a spec sheet, I think it would come in as a better product. Because again, by the time we got to the point where we got the park, there was some significant problems with the park, but here we've already kind of bought into this whole agreement of bonus density. So I think you're right, bonus density is a great place.
Yeah, but my concern with the bonus density currently is it's not performing that function. We are not retaining open space.
But you only have, just so you know, there's only one small area of bonus density that's even designated in the city, so it's not.
Well, we've had a couple of
We
them
can-
come before us, proposals, and one is still in the planning commission phase right now, but we're getting tree-lined streets, and we're getting some things that are nice features, but they're not preservation of open space.
No, so
I agree.
bonus density, yes, and we can change this. I mean, so when the bonus density was originally established, we had 4 or 5 criteria that they could choose from, and each of those criteria had certain values of density. And so Treasure Valley is actually, I think, a very good example. So I will tell you, and I can't think of the road you drive down to go toward the high school, that main road. That's, I mean, the tree-lined streets that are throughout that subdivision are part of the density bonus, and it absolutely is a beautiful, adds to that.
I agree, they are nice.
But what we
They're
found is
not, they're not retaining open space.
yes, but what we found is the developer will choose, of course, which of the bonus density options that will get them to their end goal at the most minimal amount.
Right.
You as a council and staff, we can change all that criteria whenever we want and say, you know what?
You
We're
just
gonna,
would weight it differently.
we're gonna weight it different, or even eliminate some things.
So a perfect example,
Before
a
we
perfect
move on from
example.
that, though, I want to come back to Roger's first point. So you were saying that you put specs in there on the PUD parks with the intent that in some future date, they come back to the city? Is that what?
Well, only in my opinion, if that becomes a component and I'll say this since Councilwoman Granger's talking, because then she won't hear me. I'm not as completely sold on the concept of us necessarily maintaining, but in the event we did take a maintenance point of view, in the event we did take a maintenance point of view, I can certainly be convinced that way on a smaller park. What I would want to ensure happens is that we're getting the best product so our maintenance doesn't become a real nightmare for
So I agree with the spec sheet, I just don't know that I would want,
No.
I wouldn't wanna lead that way either, so I'm not sure that's.
But if we're not gonna maintain them, then I'm not as concerned about this section.
Well,
Get what you get.
There are, I can show you a couple of disasters, exactly what you're talking about,
I can't.
where they came in with a park as part of the project that now is nothing but a weed patch
But see, that's the
that's
point.
owned by the HOA, and the HOA is dissolved. So you've got a weed patch, actually, our parks guys have been down cleaning it up on more than one occasion, just to keep,
Because it's new.
just to keep from houses burning up, because it's open space that's laying in the middle here that's designated a park.
Yeah.
And will never become anything, because now I don't know how you'd ever sell it, because it's owned by an HOA that's not functioning.
So one example of how it works great is Coral Canyon. You know, the Coral Canyon development, that's a big development.
Yeah, bigger is, usually bigger is easier to.
That's the beauty of it, if you can get a big development.
If you remember, we had another one across the street at Indian Springs.
We did get a little.
Indian Springs had a park that's designed as part of it. Most of those people built in there, and still were asking, where's my park? Well, the developer went bankrupt.
But when you get,
And
when you get a
There is no
small,
park.
you know, neighborhood, like a little development, it's pretty tough to be able to put a park in there. So I think that the circumstance has to be right and has to work, and we can certainly work through those things.
Well, can I just say one more thing with regards to, I'm
It's
sorry,
Troy's.
it is Troy's turn. All I heard Troy say is I'm not saying anything, so I just want to.
Get in.
I thought it was a pretty good little point. It actually would have helped about 3 conversations ago, you know, but I look,
Councilman, why don't you ever get so
Jeez.
shy? I have something to.
you know, it's really hard to get a word in edgewise in this room.
I tell you, you talk so much.
So I just looked at Heritage Place, right? You know, we're asking them to do a little park area, they wanna do a pool, they've added some parking, they got another little park area, you know, before too long, they've got a fair amount of money that they're looking at to contributing for their residents anyway, where if we can kind of work with them on sizing and what we want, you know, certainly create a set of standards, like construction standards for roads. But I think that's an area where you could have done something like that with a smaller pocket park that we'd be happy to own.
And I've had people come, you know, from different neighborhoods and say, hey, we've got a park here, can you guys come, you know, take it over and do it? And some of those would almost be glad to do it, but my answer is, we would love to. There's one in particular, we'd love to as soon as that's brought up to the city standards. We have those standards, we have, you know, specifics of what they need.
Certainly, I think any of them ought to be up to the council to review and say, are we gonna accept this one or that
Well,
one?
are
But-
you to say that this can meet standards and here's what the standards are, and then
Yeah.
form these partnerships if that's what happens. So it seems to me like it would be nice to have us look at the ordinance that says what the size is and take that size away or reduce it significantly. And the other is to say in that ordinance, of course, that any size park that is a city park has to meet the city standards.
Well, walk me through.
But I think one of those standards has to be the size. I mean, we can't have too little park, it used to be, I mean, it would be a.
Well, walk me through this. You've got a park out there that's existing. I can understand why the residents would want to give it back to the city and have us take over maintenance. What does the city get out of that? If we were to go and claim a park that is already being maintained by a homeowner or a neighbor?
We get the privilege of paying for that and have it in our budget to take care of and spend money on.
But it goes back to, goes back to discussion of level of service and.
Yeah, it goes back to quality of life.
You would
certainly
look at it as
better.
taking over the level of service, increasing the level of service for that neighborhood.
You know, we accept public streets, and that
Well,
goes
I
into the public
questioned that
streets.
too, before, I wonder, you know, sometimes why we do that. I'm not locked into it, I just wanna go walk through the thought process of.
So anybody can use it. I mean, it's, public streets, the same thing. If it's a public street, anybody has a right to use it, to the use of it.
Right.
And that's some of the problem we have in some of those areas with some of those developers. They don't want public to come in. And I've been told that, and that's what I said, well, then,
Another sign.
then it's not a public park then. I mean, I'm not gonna certainly take it over if you don't want the public to come in there.
And
And that's the problem some of them have. They actually have that. They don't want, they don't want the
that's
public to come in there.
but if we're
So if that's the case, it's not a public park. And that's exactly what I told them, so.
So one of the comments I would just make with regards to, a couple of things with regards to city parks. First of all, one of the challenges, of course, we had is the very debate you had a couple weeks ago, and that is our ability to continue to fund these larger parks. And the reality is, one of the reasons we're slower than we are with building these is because we have just over half of what we're supposed to collect. But second of all, if you think about what these bigger regional parks are, they're there to also accommodate recreation. You cannot accommodate recreation on a quarter-acre park. So the Sullivan soccer field is a good example. And to me, I think we can still kind of marry these up a little bit but you need to separate them still between parks that are functional from a recreational standpoint, and this is to accommodate the city. Again, the sad part is you also got to be careful. We have a duty as government when we kind of redistribute wealth, that we make sure that people who can't live in communities that can build these things have access to them. And so I think we can marry the two things up. We do have to remember that what we primarily build with impact fees are the regional, recreational, the things that accommodate the things that are beyond just grass.
Regional?
But we also need a grass. And so that's where you can start addressing the smaller grass areas, but we still need this over here to deal with recreational facilities.
Well, even trailheads,
Yeah,
even trailheads.
And that's what we're doing now.
Great recreational access.
Our trailheads are basically a smaller park.
Sure they
And we've got park amenities in there, and that's how we've done that, and so
But it creates recreation, it creates access. It is a park, it just happens to be a natural
the
park.
trailhead boys are trying to put 4 pickleball courts in there.
There you
You know, so people can go up there and use it more than just a trailhead,
go. Okay, so we
so-
conclude with just that we'd be willing to look at something
Sure.
that reduces.
Well, can I go back to Roger's comment? You're saying you're collecting just over half that group?
Well, if you look at a $6,000 impact fee and we're collecting $3,700, we've been doing that, we essentially built one park.
Oh, based on the impact fee.
Yeah, we've essentially built one park continuous.
I mean, we'd be able to work that.
And so, well, what else have we done besides?
Like I can bring to you.
No, that's fine. I just
certain
wanted
dates.
to know which funds you were directly.
No, and that's what I'm referring to. So that's been a little bit of the problem with the slowdown in the fields, with getting where we want to go. But again, I just wanted to make the point that one of the reasons we pick up this fee over here, and I want to be very careful about saying, well, go ahead and put in a neighborhood park and we'll exclude you from this fee here, is the concern I have with that is we build regional recreational facilities that will not function in 1 acre.
We've got to make sure we still have the ability to build those things that we need to build.
But I don't think that's in
Not have all
contradiction
over the
to the discussion we're having.
Well, but it is if you're giving away the grants.
It is a community based credits. But again, to serve just what I think the councilwoman is referring to, and that is a sense of open space that you can go and enjoy some grass and some playground equipment. I agree with that. Our children don't distinguish between is it city owned or not city owned unless it's in a disastrous condition. But for the most part, I don't think these are mutually exclusive discussions, and I think we can pursue some discussion on, and then the method by which we approach it could be in both the PUD and the don't bonus.
I think,
Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna ask, back to the whole concept of, public streets get built by the developers and then they gift them over to the city. In the circumstances of like Heritage Place, if they go in there and they were to build a park, can they build it on their dime, gift it over to the city, and then we would accept it in as long as it's under our design standards, and then that way the HOA isn't getting hit. But
And that's-
it's fully identified that it's a public.
And I think we could do that.
And that's
We're
what we're getting-
filling in the gaps. that
That's not
seems
hitting
like
our
standards.
impact fees, that's a way to do that with those
And
developers.
that's exactly what they're proposing to do out at Sunrise Valley. There's a place that's needed, they have to have that detention. We talked about it, it have to be the standards, the slopes have to be right, we have to put fields in there, they would build it. And then they don't want to maintain, they don't want to have a part of HOA and have that expense. The city would take that over, they would build it, and then we would take that over. But they're looking for some help with that.
Well,
Bonus
yeah,
density.
I was gonna say,
With bonus
if you could
density.
take care of just bonus density, that's
And that's
their
the
alternative, and not with with impact fee credits.
And so
Because
that's.
you haven't done anything, do you use impact fee credits?
No.
You've
It's a
lost.
net zero. Well, it's not a bad.
And they're not looking at that, they're looking at actually building that for the bonus density, so I would, when that comes in front of you, I'd encourage you to do that. They would build that on their dime, and we would take it over, we would be part of that as far as the design. It's gonna, it would be a lot like the Shooting Star Park.
Well, and it's,
So there's
what,
ways to do
what
that.
do we mean when we say bonus density? I think we mean usable. I think we mean usable, and I think it has not always meant usable. A lot of times it has meant retaining ponds that are not usable.
No, this, yeah, we would,
I know,
but we would
I know
make
what
sure.
we're gonna do with
Yeah,
that,
we would
but I'm
make
just
sure that
saying,
that would be
that,
that
Well,
My
thinking
only-
needs to come into our mind, and then the other thing is, I know you've got thoughts you wanna speak to, because you have ideas about the parks that you're building and how the city could function with that we haven't heard, and probably won't right now, because it's not open, mic, but I think that we need to hear from developers how we can partner with them better, or use bonus density maybe better to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think your bonus density would come back, if we could go back in and re-weight some of those things, then you achieve exactly what you're talking about.
Because of that developer, they get more for the dollar.
I like
And that they save money that way, they're willing to put that in to that
Yeah,
park, because that park helps them too.
I can clearly say that not giving bonus density is not part of the formula for retention rates. The only time we've given bonus density, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've got Treasure Valley for an actual park.
Yeah.
What else?
That's it.
That's it. And again, I agree
Bonus
with
density,
you.
bonus density, bonus
Yes,
density.
no, to a park.
No, to a park.
Yes, sorry, let me clarify, everyone is part of the park, but I agree with Councilman Turris. What is one thing that the council ought to do is, and staff work with you, is let's go back and rework that bonus density, this is part, not the whole, it's just a part, but let's rework that bonus density issue as well. Plus then we can move on to standards. I think one question we will have to kind of identify, and I do this probably prior to having a discussion about standards, is what level does the city take? Because as I mentioned before, if the city's not taking a particular, we're not taking certain parts that we never had before, I'm less concerned about the standards than if we're taking.
Well, so I see three things. What is the smallest size of the park, based on what standards, based on what amenities we can put in what size parks, and how do we make bonus density work more for us? And then I think there's probably some other things too, just how do we,
That's good.
but I think those are maybe 3 or 4 things that we can start with immediately, and I think we can change that size immediately, that is within the next session.
I like the idea of
The next session? What do you define as the next session?
I like the idea of.
Given how late we were up together, I don't think it.
We got time.
I like the idea of the
I don't
bonus
think it's
density
any
going
rush.
down that road. My concern with the one that you brought up down in Sunrise Valley is I kind of dug my heels on, the fact that I don't want to add density there. I've got a concern with the industrial on either end of it. So
Well, that's
I
you're
would
right.
hate to, kind of fly in the face of it. I like the bonus density, but that's one place.
So this
I
is
don't-
where there's
That's
great.
the other way, that's what
This
you
is where there's great control by the council. So the bonus density really consisted always of 2 things, and Drew, correct me if I'm wrong. But the first component was, this is how you can get bonus density. These are the things you can choose from, okay? And as we said, usually they choose things like tree-lined streets, similar architecture, some of those things. So that's the first section. The next
Say
section,
that again, similar architecture?
yeah, we have similar themes, kind of staying consistent with themes,
Can you
connected.
bonus density for making your house look the same?
Was that not it?
But Roger,
Okay. Connectivity.
that worked when we had a RA1 or RA.
Oh, no, hang with me, hang with me, Councilman. I'm just saying, this is one area the council has control, and that is reworking what the bonus density is. Okay?
It's
That's
time.
the second place that the council has control over is determining where bonus density is applicable. You don't make it, we never have made it from border to border. As a matter of fact, so going back to the councilman's point, this is really the point, because I think you are right, Councilman. We are at a point when we probably should address these things. But what you may want to say is this: we know some of the areas that we are deficient in acreage of parks. Those are the areas we're designating as bonus density areas. and try to incentivize those areas for those things. You don't have to do them from border to border, I wouldn't recommend that you do.
So,
If you have concerns in Sunrise Valley and the council collectively has that, there you go.
are they only applicable to zones now?
They
You
were,
have bonus density, it's available.
they're not
to anybody.
by zones, they're by area. We designated the area, isn't that right? This is a bonus density area.
Okay.
Now, most of that's always gonna be residential because that's the only zone that's bonus density.
I don't feel like it's inappropriate to ask, but I just want to say, when is it appropriate for us to bring the bonus densities back to the council for discussion? Because I think it's something of a point that needs to be discussed.
Well, and this is what I want to bring up with Councilman Bellston. So this part, they have to do a detention area there. So we certainly wouldn't give them bonus density for something they have to do that way, because it's a requirement for them for the flood control. But there's other amenities, other stuff that they can be there. So I don't think that, I mean, you wouldn't give them the whole world for bonus density, but I think it's something to look at and say, hey, you know, we
Well, but I don't wanna give
would
them-
make it worth your while because you're paying for this. And so how can we, you know, give you, you know, so much to make up for that? You don't have to give them the whole thing, but
Right, but they
I think
want this,
something
in
to
that case, they want the sales tool of being, okay, we've got this amenity that people can come and access and use. So I don't wanna give away the farm and say, well,
Exactly.
okay, we'll just pay for that amenity for you. No,
I agree.
you know, if you wanna have us maintain it, we expect that you're gonna do something out there for your own amenities, but if you want us to maintain it, build it to these specs, and I mean, I can see some credits for it,
And
but
that's what I'm saying.
but I don't,
think something
in
worth
that
having.
case, I'd rather look at actual impact fees and what percentage that we partner in on it than to do a bonus density,
Well,
just because of the circumstances that they've kind of put themselves in.
I agree with you, Councilman Billis. And one thing I want to add to that is, maybe one factor to consider is, does it meet the level of service that we try to provide for residents as a whole? I don't want them to just have one huge, 5,000, I'm completely overboard on this, but 5,000 dwelling units and a 2-acre park, If it meets what we feel is the level of service that we're trying to provide for our citizens, I think it's something to consider. Obviously, if it's only 3 residents and they've got a place for, 2.5 grass and they get the same benefit, I think there's some things.
No, there has to be a ratio. They're gonna have to have
Obviously, a ratio I think is beneficial for us to see it, because we're trying to provide a specific intended level of service to all of our citizens. And so if we're gonna reduce the bonus density, I think it has to be in line with that, if not supersede it on these smaller parks. If there's 10 places and they can come up with a park that's beneficial for that, I think it could be considered. I think that's unique.
The 2 things is what are we trying to provide?
Exactly.
Okay, and then the other have to pay for.
I know.
And so I just want to get back to the big concern I have on the little parks in the neighborhoods, because those really, to me, aren't a city park. They're so small, there's no amenities that really public, it's just for that block or that street.
So I think
And it's pretty
we're
tight for the
asking
city to go
you,
and take that over.
what can we fit into 2 acres? What can we fit into 3 acres? What can we fit in something that's smaller than 4 acres, that's more likely
And I-
attractive to developers?
I would say 2.5 acres to 3 would be about the
Okay,
smallest.
and then I would be
Something like
interested to
that.
know if it's appropriate.
I'm not
We're gonna show
against,
what you
I'm
can
not
do.
against dropping that to 4 acres. I'm not.
Alright,
So, let me just give you the citation, Councilman.
Sorry?
Citation, you give him a citation?
bonus density.
Chief's in the back, we're good.
What did I do?
Chief Williams will take care of that after. So 9-8A-7 is the bonus density program of the city, the code section. And so to go back to your question, Councilman Clough, about, when can we start having this discussion? I'd recommend you guys review this and begin putting your thoughts down and start right now. So that's the section. And again, you'll see how the credits lay out and all of that, and we're wide open to you guys tweaking that, deciding how you want to weight that, and that sort of stuff. So you can start that now.
So starting it now, you mean the next workshop session?
We can put it on there and see where we go.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for that discussion. Let's move on to item 5, discussion and review of proposed change to the city code. Adding a new section, detached accessory dwelling units.
Hopefully this isn't like a new item to you. Remember we sat back there and had pizza one night, really
beat the crud out of this poor thing that not, oh, is that my out loud voice? But we did, we got really into it, I thought. There was lots of good discussion on it. So I went and narrowed and took out all the ones that we kind of thought might be problematic and just said, you know what, for right now, we're just gonna push those aside. And took that out, came down with this kind of mashed potato version, get us going. Again, what I really like about it is that I think it's a good help toward affordable housing. It kind of helps give us a finger and out of many fingers to at least offer something for affordable housing.
It's interesting because we had that conversation and within a week or so, Kate Hoff posted up, kind of a study in attached accessory dwelling units. I sent the rest of the council up here to read.
Did you?
And it had some sample ordinances in it. I just sent it to him tonight. I sent it to you. Yeah. But it had a couple of sample ordinances in some sample verbiage, and I thought it was pretty good.
And we actually took, all our verbiage is off of Salt Lake City. We took 4 or 5 of them that we went through, read, and found, that's a good point. That's a good thing. Parts in,
I think some St. George area, right? Is that where they want?
St. George pretty much eliminated accessory.
Somewhere in
Yeah,
that area.
there was somebody down here that did it, but we took like 4 or 5 communities that have already adopted. We went through and read them and thought, those are good points right there, and that's how we actually came to this. We didn't, and I just found that they had hit some really good points and the things that we wanted to cover. So that's kind of where we're here. So just,
Do
again,
we have access to your rework document here, your plan?
this should be in your packet tonight. It's kind of my report, it's the second one next to the agenda, item 4, city code amendment. That,
Yeah, you had 4 items in the work session, this one's item 4. No, item 4, all heavy.
yeah, kind of, it just stands out as code amendment proposed. So what will happen was, this starts out single family residential regulations. I'm gonna add this to the back end of all the residential ones instead of, I thought about putting it in lots of different places, but this will be at the tail end of all of our residential ones is what I just thought that, so it'll fit in an ag, it'll fit in the residential agricultural, and fit in the single family residential, all 3 of those.
Are we calling out a minimum zoning size to account for?
We're calling out a minimum lot size.
That's what I meant. Well.
Yeah, I didn't mean to, I wasn't trying to be too, but it's just a minimum, so everybody, you've gotta have this size of a lot or you're not considered. So, and I think that's how it should be, especially when
You said specified residential zoning districts. Do you mean that or lot size?
well, it's gonna be in all the residential zone districts.
Yeah.
But the lot size will be in there,
It says that, that's number 2.
because I don't wanna put it in a commercial zone.
Districts that are zoned residential.
Minimum 10,000 square feet. Yeah, so again, that's what but I have to put it in the R1, that starts with R16, R18. Because I don't wanna make a whole new district just because we don't wanna put them in this. So that's why one of the criteria is your lot has to be 10, and there are places in an R18 that you'll find a lot that may have to be 12,000 square feet, and that person couldn't, so it's not for the zoning.
It's the word specified that I'm hung up on. It says they are located in specified residential districts. I think it's just in residential
Okay.
I
zoning
agree.
districts.
That's fine, and
You wanna mark that?
Is that in the expensive pencil?
okay, is that in A? And,
A, purpose and intent.
okay, but is it in there 1, 2, or 3?
It's in one. It's the
Okay.
3rd line down.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I see it right there, okay. So located in residential zoning districts,
Okay.
fine with that's fine. And again, if you want to, we can briefly read through this, it's not a lot. So again, the purpose and intent, number 1, the purpose and intent of the detached accessory dwelling units is to provide additional housing for family members of the owners of single-family dwelling units that are located in residential zoning districts. The separate sale of such detached accessory dwelling units is prohibited in order to protect the residential character of the neighborhoods in which they are located.
2, a detached accessory dwelling unit is defined as an adjunct living unit with sleeping area, a bathroom, and may or may not have kitchen facilities, has no attached garage or carport, and is detached from the primary residence on that same lot. The detached accessory dwelling unit may only be used for the housing of family members.
So, let me ask you this, we talked also in that meeting about like basement apartments or stuff where you actually rent to, you know, a young couple or somebody, is that we're discussing not having that as allowable?
Right now, we're not. But again, I think we talk about that to see how this goes.
Okay.
And that maybe then we can improve upon this or add to it to help again expand that affordable housing component. But right now, we want to start out again so it doesn't become a free-for-all for family members. And I think that's the safest way to
I think
do
you're gonna
it.
have to define family members.
We already do that. Our code does allow what defined what, and again,
So is it only for family members?
that's what we're proposing.
How are you gonna take care of that?
That's just like we do all.
Well, we can, what I want to put in there, to be honest with you, is would be
You're gonna
immediate.
start with like DNA max.
I'd like to do
I think we
immediate.
gotta define it.
I will, and then,
3andMe's been called in.
because again, I can see somebody coming back and saying family members, and they'll go to my definition of my zoning ordinance that says, what do you call well, yeah, they do, they call it a family, and that's up to 5 unrelated people living in the same family. Well, I don't think we want to go there, even though it's already allowed in the code, but we don't want to allow it in this detached accessory unit. So we probably want to go to immediate family, and that's pretty, that's an easily defined term, everybody knows, you know, universally, that's directly, you know, it's you, your kids, or your parents on both sides of the
It
husband
wouldn't
wife.
hurt to say that,
Yeah, that's why, to say those things,
those things.
well, we could put that in our definition, that's what I'd rather do, is just, or here, but immediate.
So do we really feel that we're going to be addressing the needs of more affordable housing by saying we can only rent to our family members and our kids?
Absolutely.
Well, the
Absolutely.
County bouncing
That's an
house,
easy,
so-
that's an easy yes for me to
I
say.
say absolutely not.
No,
But hear this, remember the conversation, because we went all through this. If you don't, you have a real potential of basically everybody in the whole city putting one of these in their backyard and renting it out to whoever.
It is within the unique parameters of the square footage of the lot. It's not like anyone can do it. So as long as they meet the square footage, the building codes, and the ability to put it within the property.
But that would dramatically change the nature of this city.
Yeah,
So we talked about this in the meeting. Previously, we were going to just kind of ease into this a little bit, so we could get a sense of what we were doing. Yes, that is one of the things you will accomplish, is increasing some affordable housing here, but we're not taking a broad, that's not the main goal.
Yeah, so we're gonna just limit it at first thing, because my thing is, look, I'm okay taking a small step, but I'm feeling, just to voice this out, is, say we put a limit of, it's so many homes for the first so many years under review of the council, great, so we can have an idea of the impact and how it did things, I'm fine with that. But I'm saying that, I don't know if we're truly honest, if our intent is to provide affordable housing. I don't know about you.
It's not just
one
This
aspect.
isn't the pure intent to
It
do
is
that.
not the
Yeah.
pure intent, but it is an arguing point of why we're doing it.
It's one of the reasons of why we're doing
Okay,
it.
so now that
Yes.
we're considering that as one of the arguing points, I'm just addressing that, because I can think of many grandma and grandpas who lease property for young couples and stuff like that are not their grandkids. And that's why I'm just really curious, if we're worried about the sprawl, if we're worried about the abuse, can we just put a cap on it and have a moratorium in time or something?
I'd certainly be less comfortable because you run into the concern of being arbitrary, being challenged on arbitrariness.
So we would be less arbitrary if we say only immediate family members. That is truly.
Yeah, because it's an equal, it's an application equally across the board, and you don't get accused of just saying, well, we picked 10 of them, or we picked 20 of them.
It's the first 100 that came through the door.
I think at least, if I could just add this sentence, because I agree, I think we expand. No, we're not addressing the affordable housing issue, but what we're starting at is addressing the affordable housing issue with families.
Okay, and then that's a different
Thank you.
conversation.
That pins it down, because that was our conversation, and what do you have when you have aging parents who, need a place to live, and you need to be close to them? You know, what happens when you have children who are getting married, and in our area, it's very difficult to find housing for them. They're just getting started, they're going to college. How do we help? How do we help? It is affordable housing for families.
But
That's
maybe you don't
what
say
we're-
for that.
You just,
So we
you're
don't
just
have
saying housing
Taking
needs.
care of relatives. I wouldn't mind seeing the family expand a little bit to cousins or something of that nature. A direct relative is fairly limiting. With the understanding that the mayor's related to everybody in the house. Live in the mayor's backyard.
Hey, Drew, just a question on family, though. If you're referring to the other, are you referring to the definition we have of family in other parts of our code? Because it's much more.
Yeah,
That's what I said,
Much more than-
it's up to
It's
five,
more expanded.
up to five unrelated people in a dwelling, in a dwelling. Five unrelated.
No, I'm talking
That's
about,
in the code.
no, I know that, you are, that part of the code, but I
So
believe
my
there's another
family
part
can have
that
five
defines
unrelated.
family too.
Immediate.
What family is, and it goes beyond father, mother, because it designates what's a single family, I believe. This accommodates a family, and a family is defined, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, let me,
So I think you're right on what you're referring to, I'm talking about different parts.
two different.
Yeah, but while he's looking this up, we can certainly define this, as has been mentioned. We can define this, and maybe at this point, since we're all confused, we better.
You know what? We bring a big point. If mayor comes and says, I'm putting this in
Oh,
my
yeah, we got
backyard,
a cap.
and I can make it my family, compared to someone who moved in here from California and says, I'm gonna market this to my family. You can have 750,000 people to pick from in the city, and of course, we don't have that many people compared to. You know, it's just unique. I feel uncertain.
Well, I think that based upon our own confusion, I would agree that we probably ought to define whether that's in the definition of this section or in the section.
And we can define our own, a definition of what we call it is whatever we wanna make that definition be. So let's not get hung up on that right now. I'd rather find you 3 or 4 really good family things and you decide if you wanna take one of those or expand on it a little bit. We'll work through that.
Immediate family members and cute cousins on that.
And cute, yeah, the not so cute ones. Okay, but we'll get into that, because I think that there's a point on that, and again, we're trying, again, not to hit every scenario right now, but we're trying to at least open up something, and to just to add. Yeah, and the thing I wanna say is we're also still trying to protect the neighbors of those who don't, and that's the little thing I wanted to throw in on that. So, number 3, the owner of the property containing a single-family residence and a detached accessory dwelling unit must reside in the primary residence or the detached accessory dwelling unit. But the dwelling unit not occupied by the owner of the property may only be used for the housing of family members. So again, we don't want, if somebody, again, it's a mom and a dad, kids all raised, need to supply a place for their daughter who may have just lost her husband, she has 5 kids, or he just lost his job, a place to stay, they can go live in the detached accessory structure, give the kids and their grandkids the house, is what this is saying, basically.
And so if the families that needs me is all gone, okay, now I need to know that I can use this structure for storage or for additional parking structure. Or, okay, I need to know what I can turn it into, because what I can't turn it into is a rental.
Right.
As long as your storage doesn't have a social security number.
Okay,
And a driver's license.
okay, but really, we need to know this, if I put the.
Well, then it just becomes an accessory structure in your backyard and meets all the other criteria
Fine,
anyway.
let's say that, so
And it could be a man cave, it could be a man cave, it could be mom's quilting room that she wants to get away from.
let's be sure that they understand that vision, this is not gonna turn into a rental, okay?
The she shed or the man cave, that's right, yeah. Okay,
So I think we need to say that if it's not being used for those causes, it may be an accessory dwelling, but cannot be used for habitation.
okay,
However, we say that, okay, for rental,
It could be an extension of habitation for the primary resident, but not for rental purposes.
yeah.
it just becomes an accessory.
I think we do say this can't be a rental, don't we say that? We did it one time.
Well, we might get to that to the end, we'll see if it's in there. B, general standards. The following standards shall be adhered to for all detached accessory dwelling units. Number one, only one accessory dwelling unit, attached or detached, may be constructed on any qualifying residentially zoned lot. So that just means you just have one, you can have several back there for son number one, daughter number three, and son number seven. So it's just one. The proposed lot for a detached accessory dwelling unit shall contain an already existing single-family dwelling unit, and the lot must be a minimum of 10,000 square feet in size. So here's what it is, here's a minimum lot size, and it's already supposed to have a primary dwelling unit on it.
Now, again, I think the important thing to notice here is you're gonna now start to lessen and lessen and lessen this being a wildfire. Because you're gonna,
That you hit all these
you're
criteria.
gonna hit all these criteria that's, you know,
Number three, any accessory dwelling unit on a qualifying residentially zoned lot being added to an existing single-family residence, whether attached or detached, shall not exceed 50% of the gross square footage of a single-family residence, garage not included, and in no case shall be greater than 650 total square feet. The accessory dwelling unit square footage added to all other existing or future structures will not cover more than 25% of the rear yard area. That's the part we didn't have it before that we wanted to put in there.
What's the purpose of excluding the garage?
I think we're just trying to help them get more square footage or limit the square footage. I think it actually helps them get more if their house isn't 1,300 square feet already. Because you may have a 1,200 square foot
We've
home.
seen some really big garages.
Yeah. But I think we're trying to limit the residential use square footage versus what this detached, we've got to draw a line in it, I guess, in the sand somewhere is also the best way to explain that maybe.
Well, the question is, though, if they add a garage to this dwelling, is it included in
can't have
this
it unattached to the
50%? Or is it included in?
We don't allow that, a garage or a carport to the detached.
Okay, then why do we say garage is not included?
That's for the primary residence.
so we can limit.
So saying, so if I'm gonna do one,
I
yeah,
got it.
So but somebody could come in with they could have a huge garage in the backyard, and put one of these in there as well.
they could, it's just not attached there too. Right. They could, as long as you're under 25% of your rear yard
But you're
area.
excluding the 25% exclusive.
That's the garage attached to the primary structure. We're talking about two different garages here.
Okay.
The garage attached to so if I'm coming in knowing if,
Let's
most
say
of them are
that-
gonna hit 650, let's just put it
Let's
simple
just say
here.
that the garage attached to the primary structure.
Okay,
I think we should say that.
a garage attached to the primary structure not included. Does that work? Okay? Okay. And again, this is based on that 25% backyard. They can have a detached 500 square foot garage back there. This thing will have to be away from it, but between the two of them added, cannot take up more than 25% of that area. Okay. Number 4, all detached accessory dwelling units shall be limited to 1 story and a maximum of 17 feet in height. And in no case shall the roof exceed the height of existing residence. Again, this gets into a story of this building we had here. It had a very small home. All of a sudden I got an accessory structure 3 times the size of the home in square footage and double the height. And this will eliminate that.
Can I make a suggestion of that one?
No, you already did. I put your 17 in there, remember? We had 13 original, we had 13, and so from the discussion, which was a good discussion, we bumped it up to 17. Go ahead, sorry.
I've built a couple of places and I've stayed in places that had like a loft area with a couple of twin beds. So, I mean, I would think that would probably be, they could do that well within 17 feet. So I'd probably just say, take out the limit to 1 story and just leave it a maximum of 17 feet.
And if they can fit it in there, they can do it. If they can't, they can't. Is that?
So,
That's a
so to
consensus,
give you an
huh?
example, I did a tiny house or I stayed in a tiny house where they had a queen bed downstairs with an 8-foot ceiling, and above it, they
Ladder
had
on the
a
wall.
ladder up the side, they had 2 twin beds up top, and they had a 4.5-foot headroom up there, but the kids could go up there and stay in. I just don't want somebody coming in and saying, well, geez, I wanna do this loft area, and it's somehow not 1 story, so I think it's fine to just leave it 17 feet of height, because you're not getting 2 full stories out of that.
Fine with that, that's everybody's consensus we can get. So we want to take out the one story.
Put a maximum height of 17 feet.
Okay,
Would it be a story or a floor set up at that point?
we're just gonna call it, all detached accessory units shall be limited to a maximum of 17 feet. So we're taking out 1 story and we're just eliminate that to a maximum of 17 feet. We'll let them design what they want in there, as long as it meets the code, right? Okay, number 5, detached accessory dwelling units shall be located at least 10 feet away from the existing single-family residence and can be located no closer than 5 feet to each side of their property line. Again, to remind you, that's where the building code changes after 5 feet. We don't want to have to get into all those. It's just safer to say 5 feet, helps protect the neighbor, adjoining neighbors. That's why we took 5 feet.
How close could it be to another, building back there? Like in the-
Garage.
We haven't determined that, and we may like the detached, we may want to talk with I may want to get with the building guys and the fire department and ask them what they'd like to see as a minimum
I'd
there,
say, or any other building in the front.
or any other. And I'm fine, and that kind of crossed my mind, and I know we're gonna get that eventually if we adopt this, so I think that's what we'll do, is I'll just get with the inspectors and the fire department and see what they would recommend.
Planning Commission's already looked at this, right?
They were there the same night as you guys, but they have not seen this yet. I just wanted to bring this to you guys, and then I can take it, I'll have a discussion with them on a meeting, and I just wanted, before I even head there, I wanted to see if you guys are okay with this condensed version we did.
Okay.
You saw the draft.
What's that?
You saw the draft.
Did I send you guys?
Oh, I looked at it before once.
Okay. Yeah. So I must have shared it with them, so. Okay. Number 6. 1 additional on-site parking space shall be provided in addition to the required parking standards for the single-family residential lot. Parking space shall be a minimum of 9 feet wide by 19 feet in length. And we eliminated the 35, it just said, it got really confusing, so we just said, a home requires 2 parking stalls, 1 covered, 1 uncovered. If you do a detached accessory dwelling unit, you gotta provide for 1 more off-street parking stall on the property.
Let's suppose off the street, you've got a little narrow road that goes back to that house, that unit. And I can park my car in that little road. And let's suppose that later on you said it has to follow all our standards and stuff, but do we really need as wide a road as the standard is for that use, and how many places can actually have a road that's wide enough and maybe isn't really needed?
Well, that's why we just put a size on it. So if I have, So
That's
say I
the
have-
parking stall, I'm talking about for road, there's a little.
Well, I don't know that they need a road to get back to it.
they don't need a road, they can walk back to the detached accessory dwelling
Yeah,
unit.
so we want to make sure it's not a flat.
Yeah, we're not creating that, it's just, they need to provide 1 more stall, regardless of where it is on the property, it just can't be in the front. It can't be in the front yard, we don't allow vehicles to park in front yards, but it has to be somewhere.
And it still spells out in code that, tandem doesn't qualify.
And here we won't get that, they just have to provide, show us that, here's my 2 required already, here's the 3rd one's gonna go right here. Number 7, under no circumstances shall accessory dwelling units, whether attached or detached, be used for nightly or vacation rental purposes, unless approved through a conditional use permit is outlined in this title. Well, we have that conditional use permit option that nobody,
You already have
Nobody's
that
been able to
within the
do it,
zone
yeah.
anyway. You already have that within the residential zone anyway, as they can apply for a conditional use permit for a vacation rental within a conditional use zone anyway, so it's basically just referring to that.
it's just referring to that, so I don't wanna say you can't, because that's, when we did the, you'll remember. Number 8, construction of all accessory dwelling units shall meet all applicable building codes adopted by the city. Again, this gets to that height thing, they'll have to still make sure it meets the code. The ceilings have to be a minimum height, et cetera, so we'll let them.
It's funny that, so you might wanna look at that, because the tiny houses, depending on how they're built, don't meet, they don't have codes associated with them. If they're on a frame, which you can
Is there a
On
portable?
wheels and they're portable, and then you set them down, they classify under RV, and they fall into a whole different set.
They're recreational vehicles, they can't be longer than that, 39, as soon as they hit 40 feet, then all the standards change. That's why you won't see even a tiny house, it'll be 13, 11, and 7/8, but, 39 feet, 11 inches and 7/8, but they'll never break 40, because that's where you end up in mobile homes. And all this HUD standards then kick in, so.
So we're not allowing a tiny home to be considered an accessory dwelling unit?
It's not a detached accessory dwelling unit, it's a portable, I think of it as a trailer, an RV trailer. But we wouldn't let people live in them.
Because right now, if they're on wheels, or go for kids.
Yeah.
From living.
Stay in some nice tiny houses like that.
Well, there's some great ones, very inventive, but.
So right now, just so there's some clarity on that, we don't allow people to pull in, we get complaints on this all the time, we just have to enforce it. We don't allow people to let, Uncle Eddie bring his
I know
RV
they-
in for the next 6 months next door, tied in with the hose and because of sewer and all those things.
Yeah, because some people have clean outs on their property because of their own RVs, they put it in their sewer system, they'll do that, but then Cousin Eddie comes with, we don't let them park.
More often than not, they don't have clean outs and they're still living there and they just have to haul off and dump it somewhere.
Right. Okay. And here's where some of the good stuff comes in, I feel, for this. Letter C, required deed restriction. As a condition of securing a building permit for construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit being developed on a lot with an existing single-family residence, the property owner shall record against the deed of the subject property a deed restriction in the form provided by the city and will contain the following language. So they'll we'll give them one of these, we'll write it up, we'll put their name in there, their current address, probably I'm gonna put their parcel ID on it too, I was thinking. Then we have them go and record against their property, they bring us a copy back, we put that in the building permit file, and we'll probably create a file in my department for any of these that we'll have those. And again, that's just for a good enforcement backup, and anybody they sell to, they can't say they weren't told, because that thing's gonna show up like a sore thumb when they're going through all the
No, it's two
signing
things, it's a deed restriction, but it's also a deed allowance.
a deed allowance, that's right. It's permission, but restricted to this, and that's a very good point. Very good. Proof that such a deed restriction has been recorded shall be provided again to our department and shall be in place before the C of O was issued on this particular unit. D, penalty. Any person, firm, or corporation, whether as principal, agent, employee, or otherwise, violating or causing or permitting the violation of the provision of this section shall be guilty of a Class C misdemeanor, subject to penalty as provided in section 141 of this code. Any such person, firm, or corporation shall be deemed to be guilty of a separate offense for each and every day during which any portion of the violation of this ordinance is committed, continues, or is permitted by such person, firm, or corporation.
So is that 141 going to be fixed, so it's
Explanation.
That's what I really was making emphasis on that one. But yeah, it's 141, that's at the beginning of the title. I'm not sure what the penalty is on a Class C misdemeanor. Does anybody know offhand?
Well, it's up to,
Is it up to $750?
I think it's up to $750, but do we need to establish an amount in the ordinance or just leave it?
Oh, I think what we typically do with these things is we just list it as such. Then, of course, what'll happen is, no matter how long they violate, the judge will
Reduce all of them but one.
But the fact of the matter is, I think this is fine, just doing the Class C misdemeanor, because sometimes those change as well, and that doesn't require something to change.
So there's your Badu.
Thank
Yeah,
you for getting us so far, it's great.
Like I said, I think we eliminated a lot of those question things we have. It's a good starting spot, and I think it can grow for Councilman Club just to say, we may get in there and think, this went real well. Let's expand it out to whatever we may want to do with that.
So the still is going to have a limitation based off of the restrictions of the property.
Property size,
Property
location,
size,
setbacks.
So we're really to the point, and I think it has been well. I mean, again, we've got a great color on this issue because you can even go through, then throw in which HOAs don't even allow. So go through this and you're gonna see how many could even possibly happen. But on the other hand, we don't want to become a lot more restrictive, or we might as well not even have a code to permit it.
I wonder if we have one already. I mean, by the time you're restricted, it's pretty limited.
It is pretty limited. And the other thing I would say, and I know this is always a concern, one, I don't think this is gonna open up to a wildfire. We still have problems associated with the city. This is now just giving a path forward to people. We're always gonna have violators. That's always the case. We have violators now. But what we do have now is a clear path forward that we're always gonna have those violators. We're always gonna be after them. But now we have, you can do this under these conditions, and we're hoping, just like with vacation rentals, you start to push them in the proper direction. But you'll always have violators.
Because that's what we like about it. At least we're offering that for people who can, because I get people walking in all the time. You know, my mother's father getting old, I'd really like to build him a place, and right now I have to make them attach it and make it part of the primary structure, and I tell them they can have their own separate entrance, but it's gotta be all part of the primary structure. This would at least allow them, and the parents want their own, you know, their nice freedom and separation. And then that's what we're just trying to offer, is to give people an option with that.
It's actually more costly to add to the main structure too. So
It is in many cases. Yeah. Because then you're adding all the heat ducts and everything else to the existing.
Well, not
You can have it
not
on separate.
necessarily that, it's where you gotta kind of tear the roof structure off and redo how the roof ties in, because you don't necessarily need to connect that.
That's true, because you can have its own furnace, own everything back there. That's true. So with that, any questions, concerns, or something? I think we hit a lot of them, and I'll kind of go back and, you know, the biggest thing, I'll try to find a really good definition of family for this particular thing that everybody, and that's, I think, the crux where a lot of this may go right back to, that's what it's gonna hinge on, what you guys want to determine to be that.
Mayor, I have no further comments.
Anybody else?
So you want me to move forward then, is that, and just try to find a good definition of family, it sounds like is the biggest.
And you'd be moving this next, is that what you're asking, is that you move it, start the process?
If you want me to start the process for adoption, I have to do the advertising, et cetera.
Yeah, I think we want comments, we want to react to it, suggestions.
Okay, we'll put it out there then. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Before we adjourn, I'd like to, I've been at this for a while and have observed, I got myself into a pattern I'd like to change a little bit. Usually when we have a vote in a second, I usually either go to Doug or Jeff to start it off. I'm gonna randomize it a little bit. Start tomorrow, so just be aware of that.
You call the name out?
I'll call the name out and ask you to start that out.
You see Granger right, and it goes this way, or?
No, just stranger and
Stare us down.
stare you down.
And we won't have to say our name, you'll say it for us. Thank you.
I mean, I don't get to be the third vote every time anymore.
Well, I noticed that, you were a lot of times were the third vote.
Attention.
And there was a couple of times, I think that was very uncomfortable for you, not that I'm trying to accommodate everybody, but I think,
I appreciate the change.
so.
Personally, Mayor, I fear change. That's why I could never work in the cash register.
You should have done stand-up.
You should, and he does.
Yes,
Well, I
it's on the
think it's
council.
Stand up, he is stand up.
So if it becomes a real concerning factor in your life, then talk to me about it, we'll try and see how it goes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made. Second.
Let me try it. Granger.
Aye.
Love.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Bellison.
Aye.
Turk.
Nay.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
You started counting at that point?
No, that was the